Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you here with us today. We'll give just a few more moments for people to log on. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started today. And we are recording today's session so that anyone who's not able to attend will be able to go back and watch our discussion and slides that we share today. Today is our LeCAP stakeholder meeting, and it is October 21st. Welcome and thank you all for taking the time to be with us here this afternoon. We'll go ahead and jump to the next slide. And Michelle Rollins, our Assistant Superintendent of Business, is going to walk you through a few of the next slides.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for joining us. So just to provide some background on the LCFF, which stands for Local Control Funding Formula Budget Overview, is that in the most recent years, the LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan, has been part of the budget process, which was due each year prior to July 1st, which was part of the budget adoption process prior to June 30th. With Senate Bill 98 under Education Code Section 4309, that changed with the changes occurring with COVID-19. And so for the 2020-21 school year, the budget overview is part of the compliance of the first interim financial reporting period, which is due on or before December 15th of 2020. With this, there is also the adoption and submission of the budget overview for parents as included in the LCFS package, part of the December 15th, 2020 deadline. And moving to the next slide. So Senate Bill 820 requires that the template and instructions be included for the current fiscal year of 2021. This is specific to calling out the specific funds for each LEA or local educational agency under the Coronavirus Relief as well as the CARES Fund Act. And with this, we have our budget, which is part of the local local control accountability plan, as well as the LeCAP, the learning continuity and attendance plan. With that, we will show the total expenditures as well as the contributions for the unduplicated pupils in the LeCAP plan. Let's move to the next slide. So with this, the CARES Fund Act includes what's called the ERSER funds, which are the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. This also includes the learning loss mitigation funds, and these are part of the Corona Relief Funds as well as the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Funds, or what's otherwise known as GEAR funds. And let's move to the next slide. So this is a familiar slide that some of you have seen. These funds are part of both state and federal funds, and they do have various timelines that the funds need to be spent by, as well as the allocations for each funds. So the first funds are the Learning Loss Mitigation Funds, or the GEAR funds, which represent just under $150,000. And these funds must be spent by September 30th, 2020. The next funds are the Learning Loss Mitigation Funds, which are part of the Corona Relief Funds, which represent just under $750,000 for our district. And these funds do need to be spent by the end of this current calendar year. The next funds available to the district are the CARES or ERSER funds, and this represents just over $76,000. And these funds need to also be spent by September 30th of 2022. The immediate funds that were available to districts upon the COVID-19 closures were represented through Senate Bill 117, and those funds did become available immediately upon the school closures of March 15th, and these funds needed to be spent by the end of the 20 fiscal year, so June 30th, 2020, and that represented approximately $50,000 worth of funds, and those funds were spent prior to June 30th, 2020. And then the last funds that are represented through both state and federal funds are the learning loss mitigation funds through the general fund. Those represent just over $201,000. And those funds, again, do need to be spent by December 30th of 2020. And that represents for our district just over $1.2 million in total combined state and federal funds.
All right.
So I'm sorry. So the next slide is specifically from the California Department of Education. And this template is for the budget overview for parents. And again, it is a requirement to show the total projected general fund revenues, as well as a breakout of the expenses, both from state, federal, and local funds, as well as the CARES Federal Funds Act. This will be represented as part of the first interim financial review period, and it is part of the review process that we'll be bringing forward to our board prior to December 15th, 2020.
Great. Thanks, Michelle, for sharing all that information. And the next part of our meeting now, we're going to dig into two components of the LeCAP that we brought forward for approval at our board meeting and our public hearings that happened in August. And those two areas are the pupil learning loss, and then also the increased or improved services for our English learners. So we're going to start with this first one, which is pupil learning loss. And our goal stated that all teachers will implement the new K-8 assessment calendar, and the K-8 formative assessments will be developed by our teachers to monitor student learning, check for understanding, provide individual feedback, differentiate instruction, and collect data over time. And so next we have Julie Harris, our Director of Student Services, that is going to talk to you about one of those monitoring systems that we have put in place, which is iReady. Julie.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure. Thumbs up. Okay, good. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to this meeting as well, and thank you all for being here. I want to remind everyone that the assessment calendar that we developed has formative assessments on it that teachers use daily or weekly to check in to see how students are doing on the individual skills and standards that they're teaching. And then they have some more summative type assessments that they give at the end of a chapter or a unit assessment in math perhaps. And then we've got even larger summative assessments like the iReady program, which gives us data over large chunks of time. And so I want to just remind you that the iReady is just part of the triangle of assessments that we use along with student work to determine or pinpoint or triangulate how a student is doing in terms of standards and skills and the progress that they're making. So I just want to remind everyone that this is just one piece of the triangle. It's not the whole triangle. And it's the first time that this district has given a common summative assessment other than the end of the year assessment called the CASP, which is done statewide, California assessment. And so this is exciting for us because we've got some more information and data to use to triangulate, to get to know students a little bit better and to hone in on where that they are succeeding and where they might need some more support. So you can see that this is really the 30,000 foot view of students K-8 in terms of the reading assessment. And it shows that this was taken, in the beginning of the year, and most of you know that because you proctored the assessment, which is also highly unusual in the history of time that we've been educating kids. We generally give them the assessments at school and not at home, and so they can be proctored by the teachers generally. So that's also new, and so this is again one piece of the puzzle, and this 30,000 foot view and reading shows, for example, that a large percentage of our students, 67% of our first through eighth graders, kindergartners didn't take the iReady assessment yet. They'll be doing that in the winter, I believe. have strong phonological skills, right? Are proficient in phonological awareness, which makes sense. And just from this, perspective, for example, it shows then that comprehension is the area that we have some kids at risk, and then more kids kind of in the yellow tier, which is moving towards proficiency. And this is like, the high level district sort of view of the iReady. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see a really a laser focused version of what a student might get. So what a teacher or a parent might get around a student's iReady goals in reading. So this is just one particular student. We're just giving you an example. So it can go very high level from the district to the school site level, to grade levels in particular, and then to students. And you can see, for example, on this particular student, that their phonological awareness, their phonics, and their high frequency word, they tested out of their grade level band. Vocabulary comprehension and literature and comprehension is right there in the proximal zone, right there, still in the green zone, which means that they'll make the typical growth that we are expecting given what they have shown thus far. And this is, again, a reading, individual students reading example. If you go to the next slide, you'll see math, the same student. So this same student, and you can see there, now we can hone in and see, okay, this particular kiddo on the iReady diagnostic assessment looks like they've got numbers and operations down in proficiency, but algebra and algebraic thinking and geometry could be some growth areas for them. And so that we can get very stylized reports for our learners. And again, I just want to keep reminding everyone, this is a snapshot in time. This data becomes even more powerful after it's been practiced and then given another assessment in the middle, in the winter time, and then again in the spring. So when we can look at growth over time to see that students are making progress. So we are able to really drill down with iReady to get that kind of information. And if you go actually to the next slide, you'll see, we can get a personalized instruction summary, for example, of exactly how the student is doing, how much time they spent on the task. Maybe that gives us more information about the learner. And we can even drill down even further. So these are things that teachers can really use to help guide their instruction. And again, if you go to the next slide, again, there's that 30,000 foot view of the whole district around the math diagnostic assessment grades 1 through 8. So again, we can take those big views and then deep dive in. And now what we want to do is move to the next slide. Thanks. We want to ask you to think about, given that you're partners with us in education now, right? You're seeing much more of your students learning than you ever saw before, because we're in remote learning. It's happening in your living rooms and in your house, in your homes and apartments, right? What do you, in relation to mitigating learning loss, given that we have this new data assessment tool to support targeted instruction and feedback for our students, how will this help us? So we really want to get some feedback from all of you. So we want to break out into small groups for a moment and get some feedback from you, because that will help us as we move forward. So Kimberly, I don't know, how long do you think we should stay in the breakout rooms to talk about how the new data assessment tool will help us target instruction and feedback? Or maybe if someone can help me get us into breakout rooms, that would be great.
Okay, we're gonna shift back or shift to the next slide. We just had an unmuting problem there just for a moment. So I wanted to be really clear with what you're talking about in your breakout room, and then also let you know how we're going to get that data back. After this session today, we're going to send out a note to all of our LeCAP members. We're going to ask you first to see if this meeting met your expectation for the information that you gained. And then also all of the notes and discussion that you have in your breakout session, we're going to ask you to type it out right now if you have a computer, or one person from your group may do that and then drop it into the survey that we send out here at the end of the meeting. So when you go into the next room, you can decide if you want to take your own personal notes or if you want someone to be designated in your group to do that. And what you're going to talk about is in relation to mitigating our pupil learning loss, how do you believe this new data assessment tool is supporting the targeted instruction and feedback for our students? So we will now go into the breakout rooms once more. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in your breakout rooms. It's always really great, insightful discussion, and we will be looking at all the notes from your breakout rooms in that survey that we send out here at the end of today's session. And we do have one more breakout session today, and we're going to jump into the next portion here. We are going to talk about the next LeCAP focus that was in our LeCAP plan, which is here on the next page. It is the increased or improved services for English learners. And what we state in our plan is that differentiated learning will address the academic needs of all students and close the achievement gap with underperforming students. And so next, I am happy to present our staff who work very closely and directly with our students that are English language learners. And we have Lindsay and Monica, Lynn, and Rachel. And I believe that it's probably just Rachel who's presenting for us today, but I know that we have some of our other staff members on the call. So we greatly appreciate everything they've done to support our kids. And they have some really exciting information to be able to share with you next. And Rachel will, actually, I think Julie will talk to you here for a moment.
Great. Well, I just wanted to talk about some of the things that the English language developments or specialists are working on, and that is really giving the LPAC assessment to our new English language learners and using that data to help with targeted reading, writing, and vocabulary lessons through one-on-one and small group instruction. I know that they're using the iReady platform and using that information as well as they think about the targeted goals and the ELD components of the iReady. They are also liaisons between the classroom teachers and students and helping kind of bridge the gap around English language development. And and I'm sure you already know this, but they are very communicative with the families of English language learners and helping families access needed resources. So we want to give a big shout out to them because they are truly fantastic. And we're going to turn it over now, I think, to Rachel is going to come in and share with us a little bit about how she takes the LPAC data and transforms it into ways that she can use to support learners.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Hudson. I teach 6th through 8th grade ELD and 8th grade English at the middle school. So I've been teaching ELD for quite some time now, and I have been using data as a form of targeted instruction the whole entire time I've been teaching ELD. I think that data should really help us understand where we should meet our students and the needs and the levels of support that they're at. So this is 2020 to 2021. I assess students 3 times a year, at the beginning of the year in September, mid-year, and at the end of the year. And there are different ways of assessment, and taking that data and collecting it and using it is what we do at the end of the assessments. So this year we started iReady, and iReady actually has been really helpful. So I take the iReady scores and I use that for vocab and comprehension of literature, informational text, as well as phonics. And that's been super helpful to see how that aligns with the other types of assessments. So this is per student. So I take all my EL students and I do this for all students, and it's reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So that one is vocab and comprehension. And then we have the support teacher who teaches LLI, and we've been doing LLI for the past 5 to 6 years. And she does an LLI assessment, which is their reading and comprehension goal. So now we get to work with iReady and LLI, which assess both their reading and comprehension. And it shows a lot of support and overlaps, which is really nice. So it confirms a lot of levels that they're at. Then I do a specific ELD writing, which is according to the LPAC standards and rubrics. So I take that in form of nonfiction and fiction writing. And every year I give a new type of writing for fiction and nonfiction for each of the students, and then use the LPAC rubric to then get a level of where I think they're at and where they need to be. Then I do a listening and speaking, which are provided on the LPAC site. And so each student then has a listening and speaking assessment where goals are then created. So I use all of these, and at the end of each assessment period, I then create teacher goals and a student checklist. So for my teacher goals, I have an example of one specific student. We have vocabulary goals to get them for their academic language, which is really important, especially for the long-term English language learners. We have specified reading goals, writing goals, speaking, listening, and grammar and punctuation. So each student has their own personalized goals. And then I take those goals and make a student-friendly checklist, which is something that this is new. I started it last year. So this is a very new type of checklist, but the students really like it because I think that it gives them a form of agency in their own learning. So then the students check off, do you feel confident about synonyms? We're learning about synonyms for the last half a year. Do you feel confident about that? And then they'll check it off, or they'll say, no, I don't really. And again, I see the kids 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. So I have a few years with them. And this is a long-standing checklist that we use and that we add and we take off depending on their assessments. So with the student checklist and the teacher goals and all of the assessments, I then create a schedule. So our schedule looks different this year, of course, because it's at a distance, but we have targeted instruction according to the different needs. So each group, we have on Mondays, we have grammar and sentence structure, and then we have a newcomer. And so the 2 teachers then tackle that. And then on Tuesday and Thursdays, we have reading, writing groups, and we have support and check-in groups and speaking and listening groups. And then we have a Kate Kinsella vocabulary group, which is all targeted to ELD. And these are all according to their speaking listening skills, which are very different. So all the skills in the groups all change by each time slot and period. It gets a little complicated, but they're very resilient and they go with it. So we have a lot of programs, and it's using all of the data and assessments to directly target their needs and their scores so they can move along the LPAC scale and get out of the language learning, I guess, the hold, because sometimes they get held in certain groups and certain levels if we don't take the data and use it as a form of moving and helping them excel. So and then with that, I've also created modification and accommodations for students with the ELs. And so every student or every teacher that has an EL this year, I've brought the accommodation and modification guide for them, and that's based off of the assessments and their needs. And so the needs are going to look different from newcomer to emerging to long-term EL to expanding and bridging. So the teachers get to use this guide, which all aligns to LPAC, Common Core curriculum, state accommodations and modifications, and everything that really supports the EL student specifically. So that's my rundown. I'm done.
All right, great. Thank you all. We are going to shift back to the presentation here. So we'll go to the next slide. We have another question that we would love input from our community on here. So stakeholders, we would like to know as we continue to look at the different information in the LeCAP as we're making sure that we're carrying out those different plans. We'll talk next time about our counseling services, and we will talk about how we are monitoring and supporting the mental health and social and emotional well-being of our pupils and staff during the school year, including the professional development and other resources that have been provided to address trauma and other COVID-19 impacts. And so our question to this group when we go into our breakout rooms is, what information would you like to see? What specific questions might you have, or what have you seen related to this as we have been going through the fall? So we are going to break out now, and you can have a discussion in your room about it. And then one person or all people can take your own notes, and you'll have an opportunity to input that for us as well. So we'll go ahead and break out at this time. Okay, thank you all for coming back, and we had really good discussions again in our rooms, and we absolutely would like for you to put all of your notes in the feedback that you're going to be getting just here momentarily. And before that, we do that, we're going to just jump to our next slide so we can go back to all of our EL staff who are on the call today. I think we'll go back up then to slide right ahead of that. There they are. Okay. Lindsay, Monica, or Lynn too. I know we got to hear from Rachel. Lindsay, Monica, or Lynn, if you wave your hand, Amanda or Kate will be able to definitely unmute you if you have more to add on your input related to some of the data monitoring and work that you've been doing. Anything else from your group?
Well, I'll just add a little something. I'm Lindsay Lazan, formerly Caruso, the EL coordinator mostly for Tam Valley, Old Mill Park, and Edna. And Julie asked that I just sort of mention a little bit the changes between testing this year versus how it's been done in the past, because when a new student registers and they indicate on their home language survey that they speak another language at home, or they are exposed to another language at home, then the state requires that we test them for English fluency. And in the past, that's been during the school day, one-on-one with students traveling from site to site and administering the test, which is about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour long. So in the past, it's actually been not really our favorite part of the year because it interrupts our regular teaching schedule. It's a lot of work to schedule with students. We're traveling from site to site. We're working with students that haven't met us before, and they are not totally clear on why we're doing this. So as much as we try to explain it and we explain it to parents ahead of time, the communication is always a challenging piece. So this year, we had to wait for the state guidelines to come out to explain how we were going to be testing remotely. And when we found out that we could administer the test remotely and we could do, it's a computer-based test, but we were allowed to do a paper pencil version. Monica and I just got creative really fast, and we put testing kits together and we delivered them to all the students. I had about 35 students to test. So we delivered them to their homes and set up a test, set up a sign up Genius to test, at indicated times. And it ended up being really an incredibly positive thing because we were able to meet the parents that we normally wouldn't meet, have a conversation about who we were, what the program was all about. And it was sort of like this bright light on an otherwise a little bit of a darker time, or well, right now it's sort of a dark time. And so when I talked to Julie yesterday, actually, I feel like I was sort of glowing about it. Like, it was such a great experience. I would never say that about testing, but you get feedback right away when you're working with a student, and you get to talk to the parents you get to see them in their environment, and they're much more comfortable. And so it was overall very positive. And we finished all the tests in 2 weeks, where normally it takes about 5 or more. So we were pretty happy.
That's great. Thanks, Lindsay. We really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Great. I just want to end a little bit with that moment, just saying that the ELD specialist and I meet regularly, and I meet with RAMP regularly and counselors regularly. And it's just really the commitment of the staff here to ensuring that we are focusing on our most needy students is really evident, from the principals to the teachers to the support staff. And I think that that's something that we want to continue to focus on this year, and really ensure that our learners are making progress. And so I'm glad that we had an opportunity to let some of our fantastic teachers share how they're translating the assessments into action to supporting students.
All right. And so just to keep all of you informed, we do have a stakeholder meeting for all of you again on November 18th, and we're going to be following up with that next question that we did a little bit of pre-briefing on today of what are some of those social emotional supports for our kids. And we already got really great feedback about wanting to know more around our wraparound services. And I know that our counselors will be happy to speak to all of that. And we'll take all of the rest of your feedback to make sure that we're really targeting some of the information that you would like to know, and for us to be able to get the feedback from you as well. In addition to that, we'll have another LeCAP meeting then on December 9th. And then in between all of those, we do have our student meetings. And so last time it was really successful for us to be able to have that chat with the kids in our district. And so we encourage all of you as LeCAP members to invite your children to attend with us, which is next week, October 28th. That website link is always on our website for the LeCAP page. As LeCAP members, you also get a personalized email about it. When our students are on with us, we want to make sure that we're hearing our student voice during that time. And so they'll have the opportunity to share with all of us. Again, October 28th and December 2nd. We do have our board meeting on December 14th, where we will be bringing that parent budget overview that Michelle talked about at the beginning of the meeting today. And then just remember, we also have a meeting in November, of course, that is on November 12th. And it's actually our State of the Students. And so we'll have representation from all of our students across the district being able to share with all of us and give us updates. So we greatly appreciate all of you attending today and being able to provide us some of the feedback. And we would like you to be able to take a little bit of time here at the end of our meeting and fill out that form for us. Thank you and take care. We'll see you again soon.